Mill Gone. Written and voiced by TransCanada Limited. One gorgeous summer's morning, Jackie and Jordan were waiting for orders in Wellcock's yard. It was a busy time on the Esquimalt to Nanaimo, as the Port Alberni line had recently reopened and was being completely rebuilt. Work trains left Nanaimo northbound almost every morning, loaded with new rail, ties, and all the other supplies needed to relay the old rotten tracks. Jackie watched as Chloe backed down onto one such train a couple tracks over. It was a short line of rusty blue mill gondolas, loaded to the brim with a shipment of tie plates for the project. The dense, heavy load really had the old cars on their knees, with their truck side springs completely bottomed out and their bodies bowing slightly in the middle. Seeing the cars bearing that kind of load reminded the green and yellow GP30 of the work trains she used to run when she and the ENN were owned by CP Rail. She chuckled slightly. "You know something?" she said to Jordan. "Sometimes I feel really bad for mill gondolas." "Now why in the hell would you feel bad for a rail car?" scoffed the big ST40. "I don't know, just look at them. Rusty, bent, totally overloaded. If any car has a rough life, it's a mill gone. They always end up handling the heaviest stuff the railway has to carry." "Well, that is what they're designed for," said Jordan, unamused. "I swear, you need to get your hood checked out or something. Out of all the things to worry about right now, you picked the mill gondola cars. Give me a break." "Well, you don't have to be such a dick about it," replied Jackie as Chloe sounded her horn and departed. "I just think it's important to respect the equipment is all. Just because railcars aren't like us engines doesn't mean they don't deserve fair treatment." Jordan just chuckled to himself as his crew finally arrived, and he started up and rolled off to retrieve his train. "You need to learn how trains work, cousin. The cars carry the goods, and we pull them. We're the important ones." "Just like how most humans see us," sighed Jackie. Meanwhile, Chloe had just exited the yard northbound. She cheerfully rolled up the line, humming to herself as the old gondolas clattered along behind her. What she and her crew didn't realize was that one of the cars was still equipped with old-style friction bearings, and they hadn't been properly inspected that morning. After a short problem-free run, Chloe arrived at the interchange in Parksville. Leaving the gondolas on a spur near the station house, she set off northbound light engine for her next job. The track gang would come down from the work site later to retrieve the gondolas, unload them, and set them back in the spur once they were empty. Back in Nanaimo, Jordan was departing the Duke Point Intermodal Terminal with a few trailer-on-flat car loads for the north end of the line. His orders included a pickup of 3 empties in Parksville to be loaded at the tie plant that had been set up in Courtenay Yard to supply the Port Alberni project. He thought he recognized the numbers on his paperwork, but he couldn't remember from where. As he rolled up the line, he remembered what Jackie had said and scoffed. As far as he cared, railcars were just containers to move the freight the railway and customers depended on, just a means to an end. He made a plan to show Jackie somehow that her worries were totally pointless, and hopefully make himself look like a badass in the process. He grinned, excited at the prospect of showing off. Soon he arrived in Parksville, just as Chloe had hours before, and he did a double take when he noticed the 3 gondolas from earlier in the siding. Rechecking the paperwork clipped to his pilot, he noticed they matched the pickup numbers. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. He could use the very cars Jackie was worried about to prove his point. Excitedly, he dropped the trailer loads behind, ran forward, and reversed onto the spur to couple onto the gondolas. They bounced and shook at the sudden movement, their couplers clanging together and handbrakes squealing. While he waited for his crew to couple up the brake pipe, he mulled over what he was going to say to his cousin next time he saw her. A few minutes later, he coupled back onto the rest of his train, and once the conductor gave him the all-clear, he continued northbound, pulling hard to get back up to track speed. The old gondolas, sandwiched between him and the TOFC loads, rattled and shook at the force. Their draft gear and couplers bucked and shifted in protest, jostling Jordan's rear coupler. "Come on, you buckets of bolts," he grunted. He tried to even out the slack in the train with a brake application, but the old gons just kept on rattling. "Stupid gondolas," he groaned. After what felt like hours, Jordan finally reached Courtney. He'd had quite enough of the old gondolas by now, and threw on his independent brakes as hard as he could. The slack ran in on the whole train, and the poor old cars were thrashed back and forth with the conflicting forces. "That'll show you," he thought, giving a satisfied smirk. Before he could release his brakes to start setting out his train, he heard a familiar K5 and electronic bell approaching. "Jordan, what in 3124's number are you doing stopping like that?" scolded Chloe. She was just arriving with a load of timber from the sawmill at the end of the line. "I'm trying to prove a point, if you must know," snapped Jordan. "These damn gondolas have been driving me crazy. They've done nothing but shake and rattle this whole trip. I'm sick of it." "They're old," said Chloe. "Do you want them to get worse? You really need to respect the equipment, Jordan." "Oh, don't you start," chided the big GM. "I've already heard enough crap from Jeeps today. This is how we did it on CN and we were fine. Now can you move? I gotta spot these shitboxes over there." "Well, you don't have to be such a jerk about it," said the little blue GP9. "I gotta spot these first anyway. The Thai guys need logs to work with. Foreman says they're gonna load them in the gons when they're done." "Ugh, so I have to deal with them again back south to Parksville? Fuck's sakes," cursed Jordan. He was in a very sour mood indeed. Chloe said nothing. She just backed the log train into one of the Thai plant's spurs, then picked up a line of empty boxcars from the yard and headed south. "Stupid gondolas," muttered Jordan as he ran around his train. He spotted the trailer loads on the ramp track by the freight shed, then went for the gondolas again. Angry, he coupled to them even rougher this time. "Stupid gondolas," he repeated. "Whoa, whoa," called his engineer, trying to get him to calm down. "Don't work mad, Jordan. You know what Miss Felicia said last time." But Jordan didn't listen. He kicked the gondolas into the same spur as Chloe's log train, causing them to couple together noisily. Workmen inside shouted at him, but he paid no mind and rolled down onto another spur to relax and radio for more orders. Before he could call, however, the plant foreman approached. He was very angry. "Alrighty, so 2 things," began the foreman. "First, you kicked those cars in here so hard they almost derail, and you only bring 3. "What's wrong with that?" asked Jordan. "I mean, aside from almost derailing them. Sorry." "Well, the Parksville gang ordered 6 carloads. 6! Jordan tried to think of how this mix-up could have happened, but he remembered what he'd been thinking of how to prove. This was perfect. "You can just double load the cars," he said. "Double load?" "Yeah, put 2 carloads in 1 car. You guys have straps, right?" "Ain't that dangerous? The cars will be overloaded." "Like I said, you guys have straps, right? Those gons handled full loads of tie plates just this morning. I think they can handle a double load of ties." "Alrighty, fair point. Guess it'll be more efficient to carry 2 loads in 1 car anyway," agreed the foreman, and he headed back to the worksite. Jordan finally radioed dispatch and found that his next job was indeed taking the gondolas back south, but he was due to have a meet at Bowser with Jackie, who was coming northbound with an empty gravel train. The big SD-40 beamed to himself. This was going to be great. A few hours later, Jordan coupled onto the 3 gondolas again, excited this time. The old cars were stacked twice their height with new ties, so heavily loaded that their side springs were bottomed out again. Once he got clearance to Bowser for the meet with Jackie, he sounded his horn proudly and charged ahead. The gons squealed in protest, rattling and groaning under the massive weight, but rolled along behind him all the same. Everything seemed normal as the train clattered over the switches through the yard, finally entering the main line. "Cordy territory, here we go," said Jordan, opening his throttle right up to the 8th notch. He wanted to be going full track speed when he met with Jackie, since he knew she'd be taking the siding. The old gondolas swayed and rocked behind him, the tall strapped loads of ties making them very top-heavy. But Jordan had dealt with double-stack containers before. This is nothing. "Come on, you old shitboxes, we got a train to catch," he called. Meanwhile, Jackie was just taking the siding at Bowser. She knew she had to meet with Jordan, but didn't know how long he'd be. She sure didn't expect to see his headlights around the curve as she took the siding. Jordan was coming in hot, very hot, and he had the 3 gondolas from earlier. "Hate to say I told you so," he yelled triumphantly, but it was a bit overshadowed by everything that happened in the next 5 seconds. The last gondola in the consist, the one with friction bearings, finally gave up the fight. Its journals completely seized, causing the car's wheels to lock up. The sudden jolt broke its knuckle, separating the train, and the short consist immediately went into emergency. Jordan yelped as his engine cut out and brakes clamped on, and he skidded to a stop right next to the calmly waiting Jackie. After a brief moment surveying the situation, Jackie broke the silence. "Hate to say I told you so." The wreck gang arrived with the crane and a set of bulkhead flat cars and was transloading the ties from the tortured gondolas onto a more suitable set of cars. Felicia, the ENN's controller, had arrived in her high rail and was speaking severely to Jordan. "I don't know what the hell you were thinking, Jordan, but that was a pretty asinine stunt to pull, and you've pulled some pretty stupid stunts before." "I even told him this morning," said Jackie, "but he didn't listen. You'd think something as simple as respecting the equipment would be common sense." "Oh, shut up about the damn equipment already," shot Jordan at his older cousin. "You're in no position to talk like that, Jordan," snapped Felicia. "Disrespecting everyone is one thing, but intentionally abusing equipment is another entirely. In case you didn't know, those are the only gondolas we have for work service. You're lucky it's just the bearings that failed on that one. If they'd gotten any hotter, the axles could have failed, and there would have been a derailment. But I've never had a problem with any rail cars before. Why is that just suddenly different now?" "Jordan, you aren't on CN anymore. We can't just take care of everything at once all the time. We don't have the resources like you used to." Jordan's expression immediately flashed to one of deep regret. Oh yeah. He was silent for a moment. "I've made a terrible mistake." "Oh, I've made a terrible mistake. That's you," mocked Jackie. "That's enough, Jackie," Felicia said. She turned to look at Jordan. "Look, Jordan, this whole gotta prove myself thing is getting really old. The safest course of action is the most important one, not trying to one-up people or whatever the hell. Everyone's got to do their part to keep this railway running, including you." Jordan just looked down at the rails. "Yes, ma'am," he said quietly. "Good. Now go get a flat car from Wellcock's and get this gondola to the car shop. Then get back here and finish your job." Jordan wordlessly headed off. He'd be working late tonight. If other people usually take care of everything for you, it's easy to take things for granted. Sometimes stuff that always works might seem like it always will. But you have to remember, everything has to be cared for by somebody. And if you're on a small team, that somebody is everybody. Hopefully Jordan learned that lesson today.